Sprite Castle. Sprite Castle. Sprite Castle.
Mr. Rob O'Hara.
Sprite Castle.
Hello and welcome to Sprite Castle, the show in which we play, discuss, and review Commodore 64 games. My name is Rob Flack O'Hara, and on this episode of Sprite Castle, I will be discussing the Munsters. Do you happen to know what the name of the Munsters' pet dragon was? You will find that out by the end of this episode. But before we get started with this week's game, let's check the Daily Sun for this week's Paperboy headlines. Welcome back to another episode of Sprite Castle. I like to start off the news by giving all my video links. You can go to youtube.com/Sprite Castle and find links to not Sprite Castle, but to You Don't Know Flack. If you want to find Sprite Castle, you need to go to youtube.com/Amigos Retro Gaming, and there are playlists there where you can watch this podcast instead of just listening to it. I like to add there's videos of the game, there are screenshots of the box art and things like that I find, and plus you can look at my dumb face. So that's always a plus. If you want to catch my Wednesday night streams or other streams as they pop up, you can go to twitch.tv/Rob O'Hara. That is free. And of course, all my podcast links and everything are located at podcast.robohara.com. So with that out of the way, let's see. I don't think that I have much feedback to report on over the last episode, which was River Raid. I think I pretty much covered everything in River Raid. I got some email discussion about people earning patches and the scores that you needed to achieve the patches. I don't have any official Activision patches, but maybe that's something, I was going to say something I work on. I don't think Activision's still sitting on River Raid patches. Maybe I work on it by going to eBay, buying some patches. But I did get lots of little comments from people commenting on River Raid and talking about how they enjoyed the game, and I enjoyed reading all of those. Let's jump ahead to this week's King of the Castle. Now, again, last episode we played River Raid, and let's see, I had an email the other day from Mike McLaughlin, who identified the song on River Raid as Blue Monday by New Order. I got an email today from Louis Gorenfeld, who identified the song as Take Me to the River by Talking Heads. So, Mike, Louis, if you guys will step up right over here, I will walk you over to, if you just stand right here on this square on the floor, I'll take you right to the King of the Castle right after I pull this switch. I'm sorry, fellas, you did not get the right song this time. The right song was Don't You Want Somebody to Love by Jefferson Airplane, with the very tentative tie to River Raid that you fly an airplane in the game and the band is Jefferson Airplane. Also, someone did point out that it is a fighter jet, which technically is still an airplane, but all right, I'll give that to you. Congratulations to Chris Albright, Daniel Galepa, or that's probably Jalepa, sorry about that, Daniel, Joseph Sharippa, William Paulson, Stephen Bell, Mitsuyama, Adam from the Retro Gaming Bygones podcast, Mike Dancy, Paul Marfleet, Steve Sharippa, David Modolak, Pajako 6502, Pixel Poldy. Boy, it's a good thing that I expanded the VIP room and did all my expansions on the previous episode, because otherwise it would be super crowded in there again this time. We've also got Edward Smith, Scooter Prime, Beal Spear, and the Slow Norris. So congratulations to everybody who got the right song for the King of the Castle, and my apologies to Lewis and Mike, who are treading water down. I mean, I see you guys down there in the moat, and I know that the alligators from Pitfall are down there in the moat. There's just really not much I can do while I'm recording. So keep treading water, guys. Hopefully you will get out, and maybe you will get the song correct next time. If you would like a spot at earning a ticket to the VIP room, all you need to do is listen to the 8-bit song. At the end of this episode, it will have some connection. It could be on the nose. It could be difficult to figure out, but whatever it is, send me an email to robohara@robohara.com and include the name of the song and the band, I guess, or the performer, and tell me what the connection is, and you will receive a key. Not a real key. You get a picture of a key. But you do get a key to the VIP room where all the fun party is going on 24/7. So unfortunately, I had lined up for the pilot from River Raid to give people rides, but he started drinking early and then took off in the jet, and we haven't seen him since. So unfortunately, the free jet rides from the River Raid pilot were not possible. But I hope everybody had a good time this week in the VIP room. Moving on to Commodore news, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. The first thing on my list, this is not 64 specific related news, but the Mega 65 is now available for pre-orders. I've been avoiding talking about the Mega 65 because it's not a Commodore 64, although it is Commodore 64 compatible. It is an FPGA computer that uses it's an advanced version. It is a theoretical successor to the Commodore 64, so it supports more colors. It has, I believe it supports 80 bits. It supports at least 4 SID chips, either 4 or 6, I think 4. So it's going to play, in theory, it's 40 times faster, if I didn't say that the processor is 40 times faster than the original Commodore 64. And it's supposed to be mostly backwards compatible. So if you want a actual physical computer that plays Commodore 64 games, but people will be hopefully developing new games to run and take advantage of all that new hardware, it is now available for pre-order. Now here's where I drop this on you. The total is 666.66 pounds. If you're in the US, that is $742. So, there's always going to be, you can come out with a computer and you can put $1 million, and there'll be a few people that will get it just for the collectability. So that's great. And I am not getting in on the pre-order, but I will be curious to see what happens. I would like to see some what the new games are going to look like to take advantage of this hardware and to see how it's embraced by the gaming community. So I am standing, I wouldn't even say in the stands. I'm standing like outside the stands, looking in at the stands who are looking in at the Mega 65 to see what it does. So if that is your bag and you have $700 and something laying around, then the pre-order is waiting for you. Other Commodore 64 hardware news. This week we saw a release of the 65. This is not a 6502 or not the 65C02, which supports the CMOS. This is the 65F02, and the F can either stand for fast or FPGA. This is designed to be a drop-in replacement for a 6502 CPU. It is 100 times faster than the original 6502. They have used it as a replacement 6502 in Apple computers. I believe the Commodore PET. I don't think it's drop-in ready for a Commodore 64, but it is open source. So if you want to pick one of these up and then, I guess, make the necessary changes, whatever needs to happen. I'm not fully vested in this yet, but I'm watching this to see. I think it's probably a safe bet to say that in our lifetime, most of the hardware that we enjoy retro computing on will probably die. I mean, capacitors are the number one thing right now, and we see those problems on motherboards and power supplies and things like that, and we've got around that. But eventually these chips are going to die, and so I think FPGA drop-in replacements are probably the future for a lot of these things. I think it has breathed new life into the Commodore 64 world with the Ultimate 64, and as other solutions begin to present themselves, I think it's just going to keep this era of computing alive. So I don't really see the business case used for having a processor that's 100 times faster. Like, I don't need my games to run 100 times faster than they do right now. I suppose you could, if it's something you can toggle on and off, then you could use it almost like a warp button in an emulator where you want to, render something or do CAD or something in Geos maybe, and you could turn that processor up to 100 times faster and then turn it back down when you want to do other things. Maybe that's a solution. I don't really know, but it'll be interesting to see if this is adopted and becomes a more common drop-in replacement for old systems when their processors finally die. We have several headlines relating to new games. The first one I wanted to mention is a news story that was on Games That Weren't. This is a website that collects news and is always looking for games that were reportedly in certain stages of development. Could be early prototypes. It could be things that were just lost along the way. And they have someone working with them has uncovered a early beta copy of Popeye. Now, there was a copy of Popeye released by Parker Brothers, but this is a earlier beta. It hasn't been seen in 40 years, and I believe the same guy that worked with them on recovering Joust is the same person that worked on this. So that is available on the Games That Weren't website if you want to download that earlier version of Popeye and check it out. It looks a little bit different than the ones that we're used to, so that's pretty interesting. The Arlisoft, this guy is a porting machine. On the last episode, I talked about how he had just released Galaga for the Commodore 64, and in between that episode and this episode, he has ported over Galaxian as well. Now, I don't know, I suppose there are probably some people out there that prefer Galaxian to Galaga, I don't know, but it was obviously the predecessor. I have a lot of early memories of playing Galaxian. It was one of the few games that my local bowling alley had when my mom went there when I was a really little kid. And I remember going and playing Galaxian. In fact, I would take my Legos. I think I mentioned this on the Lego episode of You Don't Know Flack. I would take my Legos and I would build little tiny ships that looked like the ships from Galaxian. So I definitely had some experience playing that game as a kid. This version includes a 2-player co-op mode and a speedrun mode. And it says that all the enemy attack code was ported directly from the arcade Z80 code. So it should act and play exactly like the arcade game, which is pretty exciting. So go out there and Google Arlisoft and Galaxian, and you will definitely be able to find that. It's on itch.io, and I believe it's arlisoft.itch.io, and you'll be able to find that and download for free. I played another new free game called Rocket Away 2. This is I believe what is the term for this genre? Like a endless runner. It's kind of similar to that, except for it's a space game, and you're flying through space, and you basically have to avoid asteroids. And I believe this is a sequel to a former competition game, maybe one of those 4K games, something like that. And so this is kind of a fun, I believe it's being advertised as a party game. You could play this as a party game, see who could get the highest score or whatever. You know what? It's free. Don't complain. Go play it. Get in your rocket. Get in your rocket and fly away to a copy of Rocket Away 2, which is now available for free. Speaking of free, there's a new game out called Starhawks, which is another game by Richard Bayless. This is a Zap, a new Zap cover disc. It is a Galaxian style game. Lots of space games coming out right now. So it's a little bit different. There's a shield, and the graphics, the sprites are larger than what I'm used to. So there's not a lot of space between you and the aliens. So when they come down pretty fast. But if you want to take on the challenge of eliminating the galaxy of evil Starhawks, and that's HAWX, then Google Starhawks and you'll be able to find that. And finally, this is like the 11:59 breaking news of the day, is Sarah Jane Avery has released Briley Witch Chronicles. You can find this on Sarah's page on itch.io. If you search Twitter for Briley Witch Chronicles, I've been mentioning about 100 tweets today. So it is all over the interwebs. People have been excited. They've been waiting a long time for this. I believe this is a original. Well, I know it's an original RPG. I believe she refers to it as a JRPG. From my experience, it kind of looks like, Link or Zelda, like those type of games where you move around through a world and go into buildings and you talk to people, and it is available for $9.99, and for that you can download the CRT image, which can be put on just about anything. You can play it on emulators, you can play it on the Mister, you can put it on an Easy Flash, play it on a real Commodore 64, however you want to do that. It's real configurable. You can play it on anything. And you also get this huge PDF manual, which has everything you need to know. It has all the backstory and stuff like that. It's $9.99. I bought my copy this morning, and I have not had a chance to play it, but I will be playing it this evening. I can't wait to jump into that. I believe she said that it has somewhere around 20 hours worth of gameplay adventure. So, and if you've played any of Sarah Jane Avery's games in the past, you know that she puts out quality stuff. She's done a lot of shoot 'em up games. She's done a lot of different style of games, but all of her stuff is just top notch. Super great music, graphics, gameplay. It's the complete package. So I can't tell you how excited I am. I'm glad, it involves these Witch Chronicles, and I was hoping that it would come out before Halloween, which it has. So in fact, I might stream this. This might be the game that I stream Wednesday night. You know what? I might do a twofer and also do the game that we're talking about on this episode. Finally, I got a question from one of my Patreon supporters, and this episode's question was, what is my favorite genre for Commodore games, and what is my least favorite genre of Commodore games? And I can tell you that the genres that I enjoy and I play have changed over time. When I was a kid, I really liked adventures. I liked Bard's Tale. I liked Ultima. I liked those style of games. Fantasy was a game I played a lot. There's one called Sword of Denethagar, I think is right. So I really like those. But unfortunately, I just don't have time to play all. Like I would juggle those. I'd play one for a while, play another one. I just can't keep up with that stuff anymore. And so for the most part, I play games that I can sit down and play in one session. Mostly that's arcade or arcade style games. Branching out a little bit of the Commodore 64, I still enjoy text adventures, and I still enjoy point and click style adventures. So in fact, there's a new point and click adventure that just came out this week. So it's those type of games that I find myself playing the most, quick action style games that I can play over and over and play a lot in a short period of time. What I don't, my least favorite is probably real-time strategy games and what they call 4X games. These are games where you have to, build cities or do things and mine things, and I just don't have the attention span for them anymore. I don't play a lot of those, and I'm not good at them, and I never was good at them, and they always felt like work to me. They never felt like a game. So yeah, mostly arcade stuff, although I hate to answer with that answer or right after mentioning Briley Witch Chronicles, because I am super excited about that as an RPG, and I will probably be playing that incessantly over the next couple of weeks. So if you would like to submit a question for the podcast, you could do that through Patreon for the $10, the high roller VIPs get to do that. I wish that I could do it on the lower ones, but I get so many questions that I don't have enough space on my podcast to do them. So I had to move it up to that tier. So that's where that lives. If you have any feedback about this episode of the show or any episode of the show, you can email me directly at robohara@robohara.com. You can join the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/Robcast. Follow me on Twitter at Commodore. Come chat with me over on the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord, or leave a message on my podcast hotline, which is 405-486-YDKF. Also, don't forget that all of my Patreon supporters get access to the Amigos Discord server, which is home to several podcast communities, including the Amigos, ARG Presents, Pixel Gaiden, and the TeamSpeak Irregulars. There's all kinds of things that you get by supporting me through Patreon. You get the weekly Rando Rob video. You get behind-the-scenes blog posts. You get other kinds of blog posts, all kinds of stuff going on. So if you would like to support my shows, and the money goes back into the shows, it goes into computers and hardwares and domain hosting fees and all kinds of stuff like that, all kinds of costs that podcasters ultimately encounter. You could go over to patreon.com/Rob O'Hara and find out more. The lowest tier is $4 a month, and I try to put out 4 shows a month, so it's basically $1 per show each month. And don't forget that this episode of Sprite Castle is proudly sponsored by Retro Rewind. For all your Commodore bits, bytes, and accessories, visit Retro Rewind at retrorewind.ca. When you're checking out, I haven't updated the picture on this, but the checkout code has changed. So when you check out, use SC for Sprite Castle 10 to get 10% off your total order. So if you buy a little bit, you get a little bit of a discount. If you buy a lot, get a bigger discount. See how it works? 10%. Scalable. That's them. How that math works, I guess. I don't know. I didn't do so good at math. But Retro Rewind has all kinds of stuff. If you go, just go check it out. If you have a Commodore computer, go to retrorewind.ca and just look around. All their they have troubleshooting harnesses. They have cartridges. They have all kinds of stuff that you probably either don't have yet or don't know about. That's the only reason why you wouldn't have one. So, I don't know. Kind of going on about Retro Rewind, but I go out there about once a month and just go see what they've got, if they've got anything new. And I think most of the money that I have made from advertising on the show through Retro Rewind has gone right back to Retro Rewind's website, and I've used my own discount code about 3 times to order things. So, Retro Rewind, can't beat it. And those are this week's headlines, which were brought to you by my local paperboy who just ran into one of the tombstones in my neighbor's yard.
Got any cookies in there?
Now that we've covered this week's news, let's discuss this week's snack.
Crack, crack, crack the egg into the bowl. Crack, crack, crack the egg into the bowl.
Talking snack.
You know, as a kid, Halloween and trick-or-treating is all about the candy that you get. You go out, knock on doors, people give you candy, you come home. Some of the candy's good, some of it may not be so good. You know, you might get a Reese's Pieces, a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, that's good. You might get some weird taffy or some old hard candy that was left over from last year. That might not be as good. But the thing about being an adult is you can really buy candy anytime you want. You don't have to wait till Halloween to get a thing of candy. I could go to Sam's right now and buy a bucket with 8 pounds of Jelly Bellies in it, you know. So I don't have to wait till Halloween. But I really don't need that much sugar, that much candy in my life. But there's this small window that seems to happen every year where I go out and buy candy, and I buy it not immediately before Halloween, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Halloween. And what happens every year? That candy gets eaten before Halloween, and we have to go buy new candy. So we went to the store a couple of weeks ago and bought a bag of these new Kit Kats, and they are in a green bag. You can't miss them. And they say Witch's Brew on them. And they are regular Kit Kats, but it says marshmallow flavored. And they are covered, it's like got marshmallow either under the chocolate or mixed in with the chocolate. And let me tell you, it's pretty good. It's so good, in fact, that I found myself walking from my room in here out to the little bowl of candy, which is next to our front door. We were all ready for trick-or-treaters, and I went in there and got a couple, came back in, worked on this episode. Then I went back out there. Then I came back in with another handful. And I'm not proud to say that we're going to have to buy more candy before Halloween because someone has eaten all the Witch's Brew Kit Kats. And unfortunately, that person is me. So I don't really have any food that I associate with the Munsters or with this game, but it's definitely a Halloween kind of fun game. And so this Halloween candy is what I ate most of while I was working on this episode. I loved trick-or-treating as a kid. Did you ever have that house, that one house in your neighborhood that was so scary that you were afraid to go up there? Boy, we had that house in my neighborhood. But speaking of scary houses, The Munsters was published for the Commodore 64 in 1989 by Alternative Software. It is a game for one player that uses joystick controls. If you look on Lemon 64 versus Moby Games versus other places, you will see different publishers because different people publish this game for different systems. But on the Commodore 64, it was published by Alternative Software. Alternative Software was based in Castleford, in Yorkshire, England. They published lots of games for the Commodore 64. The Dalek Attack, Zoids, Huckleberry Hound, and Hollywood Capers. I think that's a DOS game, actually. But they published several games for the Commodore 64, and I would say they're all about of this same quality. A lot of the people that worked on this, a lot of the companies that worked on this is all their first title. I believe this is their first listed Commodore title. It was programmed by Bill Count and Pete Hickinson. The graphics were by M. Edwards, and I looked these guys up, and this was the first game that all of these guys worked on. And then we have the music by the infamous Ben Daglish. And once you hear the music, in fact, I have a small clip of it here. You can tell that it was done by someone great, and Ben Daglish is one of the greats for the system for sure. By the way, if you like that theme, then you should play this game, and I'll tell you why very shortly. This is the description that's listed on the back of the box. The characters from the 60s TV series The Munsters have been transported away to a mysterious castle. Playing as different members of the family in succession, the player must rescue them. As you walk through each room, you must collect items to help you deal with each challenge. You must build up your spell power by shooting ghouls, zombies, and vampires, as this allows you to deal with other challenges. Avoid contact with those monsters as they will zap your energy and finally kill you. And then it says, you have but a single life. Well, that is definitely true. You do play as all the different monsters, so that is true in advertising. And you do have a small, it's not a health meter, it's a vial of energy that gets depleted. But once it's gone, you are dead. And in this game, dead is dead. You will be starting over. This game was based on the Munsters television show. The Munsters television show aired in the United States from 1964 to 1966. There are 5 main members of the family. There's Grandpa, the vampire, Lily, who is Grandpa's daughter. There's Herman, the giant Frankenstein-looking fellow. Then we have Eddie, who is kind of he's a small vampire, although sometimes he is also seen as he has some werewolf look to him. I don't know. And then there's Marilyn, who looks completely normal, probably named after Marilyn Manson. So these 5 characters of the show lived in this big haunted mansion, and it was actually created kind of as a satire of the American life at that time. It was made by the producers and the creators of Leave It to Beaver. So they took that show and kind of made a satire by flipping all the characters into strange looking people, although they act totally normal and never seem to realize that they were different than anyone else. The Munsters aired for 70 episodes on those 2 seasons, and then it was canceled after the release of Batman. The ratings for Batman were so good that it drove the Munsters right off the air. Of course, at the same time the Munsters were on the air, they were competing against the Addams Family, which was another similar television show at that time. When we look at the box of the Munsters, we see the logo to the TV show, The Munsters, which is in front of the house. That's on the top third. And then we see the 5 characters of the family and some ghosts kind of swirling around. It's a nice artwork. It doesn't look like it's airbrushed. It may be a watercolor painting. I'm not really sure, but it's definitely artwork. And they have pretty good likenesses of the characters, but not enough to where they were like not airbrushed or traced or anything like that. So it's definitely a drawing, I would say. Now, I like to read and talk about the manuals of these games. I have looked everywhere online and have not been able to find the manual, PDF, a walkthrough, text, anything about this game. So that does leave a little bit of mystery as to how this game works and exactly what all the things are and the missions you're trying to accomplish. I did want to point out on this drawing, and if you're watching the video version, you can see the cover. It has the 5 members, which I mentioned, Grandpa and Herman and Lily, everybody's here. And it has Eddie up front, and he's holding a bat, like a baseball bat, which is really weird because nobody uses a weapon in this game. Certainly nobody uses a baseball bat. And it almost makes you wonder if this is a joke, like because there's vampires and he's holding a bat, like like some sort of pun there. Or in my head, I wonder if the art department was like, hey, put a bat by Eddie or something, and they drew a baseball bat instead of a vampire bat. I really don't know why he's holding a bat, but it does jump out at you when you look at the artwork. I did find an advertisement online for this game. It has essentially the same artwork. It has it does have the exact same artwork that the game has. But of course, being an advertisement, it also has some screenshots on the right-hand side, and it does explain essentially what we're going to be doing in the game, which again is controlling the Munsters and trying to find Marilyn, who has been kidnapped. I also found, and this was helpful, as I was looking around, I did find a map. Now, I don't know, this must have come from a computer magazine back in the late 80s or early 90s, but it is a cartoon stylized version of the map, and it shows all the levels and the layouts of the room, which is very complicated when you're playing the game. So I could see how this would definitely come in handy, and I did reference this while I played the game. As I switch on the video version here, as I move over to the video, I would like to point out, and I'm not really patting myself on the back, but I could not find a complete walkthrough or playthrough of this game, the Commodore 64 version, on YouTube, and so I made one. So the video that I am playing on the video is actually me. Now, I did find a version of this with cheat modes enabled, which basically gave you unlimited health and unlimited spell power. I don't know that I could beat the game without those cheats. Maybe I could, but if I did, it would have taken me a lot longer. And I really needed to move this along. So the video you're watching is me playing the game, but you'll see it a lot of times. I tend to walk through bad guys and things like that, and my health doesn't go down, which is something that would kill you normally. The title screen, loading screen, and menu screen are all essentially one screen. It is the same screen. It opens up with Herman Munster being chased by a ghoul running left to right over and over and over. We have credits that say by W.C. Count and P. Hickinson, graphics by M. Edwards. Copyright 1988 Tiger development. And then we have another copyright notice, 1964 Universal City Studio, and that would be for the Munsters license. Once you press a button on your joystick, you are immediately dropped in the game and things start moving. So there's no pre-game introduction. There's no text that prepares you that says get ready. Nope, it is live and your game begins immediately. When the game begins, you are looking at a two-dimensional cutscene, or not a cutscene, but like looking into a dollhouse. I have a two-dimensional view of a room. The top third of the screen has the logo that says the Munsters, and then on the left and right there are two giant bottles. They're vials, and the one on the left is your health, and the one on the right is your spell power. And so we will talk about your spell power here in a minute. I think the one on the left says energy, but that is basically your hit points. But once that bottle is drained, again, you don't die and respawn. The game is over. So once that bottle empties out, that's it for you. Now, as you walk around, you will see different types of ghouls almost immediately. There are small ones flying around. There are large, full-size skeletons they're almost like zombies. And then there's other things flying around. Some of those, when you shoot, your spell power goes up. Other times, when you shoot them, your spell power just goes down. And so one of the things you have to do is watch your spell power, because you have to build your spell power up during the game to be able to defeat some of the more advanced enemies. Like you can defeat the early small ghosts that fly around, but you can't defeat the full-size skeleton zombie guys until you've raised your spell power. And when you play the game with the cheats on, like I did, your spell power is always at 100%, and so you can kill them. Now, because you're looking at a two-dimensional cross-section of a house, when you move the joystick left and right, you move left and right on the screen, but up and down don't move you necessarily up or down. They move you, well, they do kind of, because there could be a stairwell like on the side that's closest to you or on the further side. So you don't move up in that two-dimensional thing. You move up where you go up to the next level of the house or down. It's kind of complicated. And what's really frustrating by that design system is that means that you can't jump and you can't duck. So you're going to have ghosts and ghouls and zombies and all kinds of creatures flying at your head, and you can't duck. You can't avoid these things, and you can't jump over anything that comes at you, like a lower attack. All you can do is shoot your spells, and every character shoots a little differently. Since you start off with Lily, she seems to be showing, she shoots these fireballs that go at an arc. So they go up. It's almost like Ghosts and Goblins, where they go up and then they drop down. Now you can hold the joystick up and fire up, and you will fire a higher arc, but that's it. That's your two options. And there are some enemies later in the game that are in the ceiling, hanging down from the ceiling, that's useful for. You start off playing as Lily Munster. I think I mentioned that, and you immediately begin walking around. The graphics are somewhat confusing as to what you can interact with and what you can't interact with. There's all kinds of things in the room. There are clocks. There are, what looks like dishes, bowls. There are things on the ground. There are flower pots. There's all kinds of things in this game, but you can't interact with almost anything. It's just put there as artwork. Now, as I mentioned, the Munsters theme, if you like it, congratulations, because the Munsters theme plays on a loop throughout the entire game. The sound effects are limited or none at all, really. It's just the music. And so you will be hearing that song on a loop until you decide to turn this game off, which for most people will probably not be very long, unfortunately. So again, the button on the joystick shoots. So there is, again, like I said, there's no jump, there's no duck. And it feels really strange when you're playing essentially a side-scrolling platform style game, and there is no way to do those things. Now, the point of this game is confusing. The ultimate goal to this game is to rescue Marilyn. But you begin the game playing as Lily, and there's no obvious way to switch to another character. So as you go through the house, over time, as you power your spell power up, you're able to defeat bigger creatures, and ultimately you will start finding some things that you can obtain that are useful to you. Now, one is a key, and the key is pretty obvious that it unlocks the door going to the outside, but there are two different spheres that you collect. There's a red one and a silver one. I don't really know what that represents. There's also something that looks like either a gas can or a book. I picked that up and then was able to kill the ghost that's blocking your exit from the house, but I don't really, maybe that's a spell book or something that upgrades your spells, but without the manual, I just don't know what those things are supposed to represent. But as you keep playing through Lily, at one point you will encounter Herman Munster and Grandpa, but they are just stationary. They don't interact with you. They don't follow you. They don't do anything. They're just almost like part of the background. But eventually you will get to a point where you've done everything you need to do with Lily, and you will get to the room, and then Lily goes away, and then all of a sudden you're controlling Grandpa with Herman Munster following you. And so then you become Grandpa Monster. And so you continue the adventure. You go through this whole series of rooms. You shoot these bad guys or whatever. And once you'll find a ladder, and you climb this ladder, and then Grandpa turns into a bat and flies away and leaves you controlling Herman. And so then it is with Herman that we continue the game, and we go through investigating, searching this whole house or whatever. And then we do find Eddie, one of our children, and then we go back outside. And then once you go outside, the whole game changes. This game has been, every room, it's all a 2D platform puzzle kind of game. And when you go outside, all of a sudden, you are controlling Spot. And if you didn't know, Spot is the Munsters' pet dragon. And so it becomes kind of a horizontal shoot 'em up where you are flying to the right, you're controlling the dragon, and you move up and down, and witches and monsters, ghosts are flying towards you, and you must move up and down and shoot them. But the family is traveling in their little car, and I don't think it's the Dragula. I think it's the other car. Gosh, I can't think of what the name of it is, but I think it's the something. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, regardless, they're in their family car, and so a lot of times what you have to do is you will see like pedestrians or kids on bicycles, and you have to pull down and hold down the button and pick up the car. So it's like making the car jump. But you're the dragon, so you're picking it up, and then you set it back down. Of course, while you're doing that, you can't shoot. So it's an interesting gameplay. Level, and it's really, really long. It's probably time-wise, it's probably half the game is this part where you're just flying as the dragon, shooting people and picking the car up and down. Then finally, you find another house, and you go inside as Herman, and it is full of doors. And so all you do is you walk in and you keep opening doors, and monsters come out and you shoot them. And after about 3 screens of that or 4 screens of that, you open a door and Marilyn steps out, and then the game says congratulations and moves you to the high score screen. So that's it. No different music. And if you're watching the video version of this, I've already beaten the game. If you saw the congratulations screen, it's already over. So the video has restarted. So it doesn't take, especially with cheating, it took even less time, but it takes definitely less than 10 minutes to walk through the entire game if you know where you're going and what you need to pick up. But it just says congratulations. You put in your score, and then you're taken to that title screen. And if you press a button, you start the game all over. So it's kind of a lackluster ending. I was hoping to see maybe the whole family or a picture or anything really, but it literally just writes the word congratulations, and it's only on the screen for about 3 seconds, and then it's over. Again, I like to pull the scoring out of the manual, but I could not find a manual this week. When you shoot things, the amount of points that they're worth pops up on the screen. So the lowest ghouls and ghosts are 250 points. The majority of them are 500 points. And then I think I saw some of the bigger ones are 1250. But this game isn't really about the score. It's really just about beating it, I would say. I found a couple of reviews for this game, but there was one review that really stood out, and it wasn't for the Commodore 64 version. It was for, I think it was for the Amiga version, but it was a score rating of 55%, and it went through and it kind of explained the game, which is where I got some of this information from. And it said, the positive was, okay, well, the graphics, like you can recognize the characters and the backgrounds have color and so it looks good. And like I said, if you like that song, sounds good because you're going to hear it a lot. Fortunately, it sounds good, right? But on the negative side, it said the gameplay is weird. It's confusing. It's not really fun. It's really hard. You should really get more than one life to do this. And more than that, it should just explain what you're doing. There should be pop-ups that say, find this, go to this door. It just really depends too much on people reading the manual to understand what is actually happening in this game. As someone who, again, used trainers and cheaters to beat the game, I'm still not entirely sure what happened. I mean, I know that I rescued somebody, but I don't know what those little spheres are. I don't know what some of the things are. Apparently, there's some story behind the ghouls and this and that, and why or who captured the Munsters. It also says that the Munsters were captured or kidnapped and whisked away to this castle, but why couldn't it have been the Munsters' house? The Munsters kind of live in a creepy, weird house in the first place, so I don't really know. I don't know what to tell you. This game did appear on quite a few different systems. It was released on the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, the Atari ST, DOS, MSX, and the ZX Spectrum. Some versions, obviously the ZX Spectrum probably looks the worst of all of them. It has a lot of the backgrounds are like a single color and stuff like that, but it doesn't really change the game. And the Amiga and Atari ST versions look the best. The backgrounds are much more highly defined and there's more colors. But again, it doesn't really make it a better game. So, the game is what it is. It's just slight variations in the graphics. There are no sequels to this game. There are no updated versions of this game. While trying to find information on this game, I found a million hits for Munsters Pinball, which was released from Stern. And there's a game called Planet Coaster, which is basically a theme park simulator type game. And there is a add-on pack called the Munster Coach. That's the name of the car. The Munster Coach Construction Kit. And so you can add the Munsters into Planet Coaster if you want. But not a lot out there for this game. In fact, I had the same problem when trying to find links to purchase it on eBay. I found lots of links to the Munsters board games. There was also a Munsters card game. And found even a few Munsters lunchboxes, but the only copy of the video game that I found was for the Amiga, and it was a very reasonable $7. So if you're a Munsters collector or an Amiga collector, it had another 20-something shipping to me because it was in the UK. So if you're in England, it might be a little bit cheaper for you to have it shipped, but could not find any Commodore 64 copies. If I had found a manual available, I would have bought it just so I would know more about what was going on. And now let's get into my paltry memories of the Munsters.
Alright, time travelers, seatbelt fastened? Yes! The doorway to the past!
Memories.
As a kid, I was not a big fan of the Munsters or the Addams Family, and in fact, I mixed them up quite frequently. I wasn't sure which was which. I don't think in my head that became clear to me until the Addams Family movies came out when I was right around the time I was graduating high school, maybe a few years after that. So there was Addams Family Values, I think was the second one, and those were fun movies. And unfortunately, it really put Addams Family in the spotlight, because when you go back and look, there was a Addams Family cartoon that came out. You have these Addams Family, not the newer CGI. Now there's two Addams Family CGI movies. So Addams Family really seems to have found a second life, but the Munsters really haven't. Now, there is news right now that Rob Zombie is working on relaunching the Munsters, and they are currently filming a Munsters movie, which will be coming out next year. So maybe the Munsters will see a rebirth the same way that the Addams Family has, but I don't know. But as a kid, and I've talked about this before, I may have talked about this on You Don't Know Flack when I was talking about documentaries, but definitely when it comes to film, as a kid, the first movie that I ever remember seeing was Star Wars. And so when my parents would watch Westerns, and this is something I did talk about on one of my podcasts recently, but when my parents would watch Westerns, those seemed like really old to me. Like, cowboys and Indians, that was old. And, Star Wars and science fiction, that's what was new, right? And what doubled down on that was anything that was in black and white. And if something was in black and white, I just lost interest immediately. And it's only recently that I've started going back and watching. I say only recently. I'll go, probably since I went back to college like 5 or 6 years ago, that I really found an affinity for watching these really old black and white movies, and going back and watching, I'd seen obviously the Universal horror stuff, but like the Thin Man series or these really old, and anything that's pre-code, if you read about that, those are interesting. So lots of those early type movies are just fascinating, and I hadn't really gotten into those, So even though I watched Batman as a kid, and Batman literally, is the same era. It's mid to late 60s, but there's something about these shows, because they were in black and white, that I just associated them with being old and therefore something that wasn't worth watching. And so I didn't really start watching them, again until I got older. So I don't really have a lot of old memories of watching the Munsters, but I'm excited to see what happens with this new movie, and hopefully I like Rob Zombie. I like Rob Zombie's music, and so we'll see what he does with the movies. Hear ye, hear ye. It is time to pass judgment on the Munsters. As I pull up my new graphic where we are looking at a pixel courtroom. We are now taking this into the Sprite Castle courtroom. For the graphics for this game, I give it 3 out of 5 Dragulas. Some of the game is good, but one of the problems with doing this in real time is that I'm dragging the slider instead of the volume around. Sorry about that. Graphics, I give it 3 out of 5 Dragulas. Some of the graphics are good. Some of them, it's hard to tell what's going on. For the music, I give it 3 out of 5. If we want to go off the song, I give it 4 or 4.5 out of 5. The problem is that the song is too long and it just loops over and over, and it becomes a pretty grinding earworm by the time you're done playing. For sound effects, I give it 0 out of 5 Dragulas. There really are no sound effects to speak of. In overall gameplay, I have to give this, unfortunately, a 2 out of 5 Dragulas. It's a fun license, but a confusing game. The graphics make it difficult to tell exactly what's going on, what you can and can't interact with, and what the goal of the game, along with its mechanics, is. Without the manual, is pretty impossible to decipher. Feedback about this or any episode of the show, you can always email me directly at robohara@robohara.com. Join the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/robcast. Follow me on Twitter at Commodore. Come chat with me on the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord, or leave a message on my podcast hotline at 405-486-YDKF. All patrons of my shows get behind-the-scenes blog posts, weekly videos, access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server, and other additional perks. To find out more, visit patreon.com/Rob O'Hara. An extra special thanks to all my patrons. These are the people that keep the show moving forward every single week. So thank you to my 8-bit supporters: Alan Hennessy, Alan Hudgens, Armadon Restle, Brian Barr, Kerry Clanton, Chris Albright, new supporter, hello Chris, Chris Folds, C Dubs, Cowbird Boy, Dan Paradroid Hebe, Dave Velociraptor, David Hearn, David Modolac, Eric Stryanisi, Garrett Allier, Gary Heather, Graham Vedke, Jake Nonamaker, Jason Warrens, John Bodekar Schaller, new supporter John Pearson, hello John, John Treholt, Jose Cazada, Joshua Eckroth, Mark Ellie, Mike McLaughlin, Mitsuyama, Mr. Bundy, Mr. Wacky, Nathan Dagenhart, Olaf Hope, Patrick Markey, Rad Max. I love it when a phone alarm goes off in the middle of a show. Rydar and Christopher Bow, Retro Trace, Rick Reynolds, new supporter Robot Doctor 82 for all your robotic doctor needs. Hit up Robot Doctor 82. Roy Jacobs, Scooter Prime, Scott Lambert, another new supporter, Scott Meredith. Hello, Scott, longtime listener and longtime friend. Thanks for joining up with the Patreon crew. Scrap Arcade, Stephen Burt, Steve Rasmussen, The Slow Norris, Zeke Papsky, Zerfall, and the mysterious Cobra Kai. And extra special thanks to my 16-bit supporters, Bill Spear, Boat's Head Tavern BBS, Dan Creek, Dave Zilli, Edward Smith, John Morrison, Matt Nicholson, Matt Smith, Scott Van Drasic, Steve Sharippa, and Vintage Volts. Thank you guys so much for your support for the show. If it weren't for you, there would not be a show. This episode of Sprite Castle is proudly sponsored by Retro Rewind. For all your Commodore bits, bytes, and accessories, visit Retro Rewind at retrorewind.ca. And don't forget to use SC10 when checking out for a 10% discount on all orders. Sprite Castle is available from iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, the RSS feed at podcast.robohara.com, and through the official Amigos podcast feed at anchor.fm/Amigos Podcast. To hear more podcasts from me, like You Don't Know Flack, Cactus Flax, Throwback Reviews, and Multiple Sadness, visit podcast.robohara.com for links to these shows. Many of the news, articles, and game details for Sprite Castle come from websites such as Commodore News, Indie Retro News, Vintage is the New Old, the Commodore Scene Database, Lemon 64, and Moby Games. Thanks again for listening. I'm headed back to 1313 Mockingbird Lane, but I'll see you guys here next time at the Sprite Castle.